Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things and welcome to another video. And today I'm going to be doing the Shakespeare Tag and I have Nick with me.
Hello.
This is my fiance Nick, he likes Shakespeare as well, so we thought we would do this together. So the Shakespeare Tag was created by Libby Stevenson, whose channel I will link down below. If you enjoy Shakespeare, you definitely need to go and watch Libby's channel. She runs the Bard Book Club, where she makes very analytical, fantastic videos about Shakespeare plays every month. So question number one is, what was your first exposure to Shakespeare? So Libby said this could be the first time you saw or read a Shakespeare play or poem or anything else, and I have an anything else story. So I think my first exposure to Shakespeare was, in a way, when I was 2 or 3 years old. So my dad works in theatre and he used to work for the Royal Shakespeare Company, and there is a photograph of me sat inside a giant upside down umbrella that was part of a set for A Midsummer Night's Dream when I was about 2 or 3. So I think my first exposure to Shakespeare was probably being on a Shakespeare play set for some reason or other. I think the first time I saw a Shakespeare play was also A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I think that was probably when I was sort of 7 or 8 or something. I'm not precisely sure. What about you?
I think the first play I saw was Julius Caesar. I don't know if I saw a play. That's definitely the first play I can remember seeing.
Yeah.
So yeah, Julius Caesar. I think somewhere in Manchester when I was 11. Let's say 11, maybe 10.
Question 2 is, what Shakespeare plays or poems have you read?
So I have read Julius Caesar, Othello, Merchant of Venice, King Lear. Have I read Macbeth? I feel like I've read Macbeth.
I don't know.
But the fact that I can't remember though whether I've read
Yeah.
Macbeth suggests to me that I'm not allowed to count Macbeth. The Tempest. I think that's all of them. And then I've read some of the sonnets, but I couldn't remember the numbers.
Yeah, so I'm not sure which Shakespeare plays I've read either. I've definitely seen a lot more than I've read. I've definitely read some sonnets as well, but I don't know. I'm not really sure which ones. Just a random selection that was in a university anthology, I think. But in terms of plays that I've read, I've definitely read The Tempest, Much Ado About Nothing, and Othello, because I studied them. I've also definitely read Twelfth Night and Romeo and Juliet. I've also definitely read Taming of the Shrew and Antony and Cleopatra. I think I've probably read Hamlet and A Midsummer Night's Dream, but I'm not certain. I might just think I've read them because I've seen them lots of times. So I'm not precisely certain how many Shakespeare plays I have read. Question 3 is, which Shakespeare plays have you seen on stage or on film?
Julius Caesar, Othello, Midsummer Night's Dream,
You've seen Twelfth Night,
Twelfth
So I've
Night.
seen it with
Yeah,
you.
I'm working through Hamlet,
Antony and Cleopatra,
Antony and Cleopatra,
Troilus and Cressida.
Troilus and Cressida, King Lear, Henry V. One of the ones where they're in a wood.
As You Like It.
I think, yeah,
We saw
As You
that
Like It,
together,
that's the one.
Yeah.
No, it's not the one. Oh no, it's the one we saw together.
Yeah.
I just forgot you.
Shocking.
The Tempest? No, I haven't actually seen The Tempest.
You have been in
I've
the
been in The Tempest, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I've never seen a production of The Tempest. Oh no, I have said The Merchant of Venice, haven't I?
Yes.
I've seen The Merchant of Venice.
Yeah. So I'm easier to probably work backwards from the ones I haven't seen. So out of the 37 plays that are undisputably by Shakespeare, there's 5 I haven't seen, and I've seen all the rest. So I haven't seen. So I've seen all the comedies. Of the histories, I am missing Henry V and Henry VI, part 1, 2, and 3. And then I've seen all the tragedies apart from Titus Andronicus. So I've only got 5 plays left to go until I've seen all of Shakespeare. I don't know how I haven't seen Henry V, because that seems to be quite common. But Titus Andronicus
I've seen Henry
and
V. Keep up.
Yeah, I know, shocking. But Henry VI, part 1, 2, and 3 are not on very often. And Titus Andronicus is not on very often either. So those ones I've yet to see, but I have seen all the rest. And most of these I've seen on stage. I don't think I've seen that many films at all of Shakespeare adaptations, apart from a few that we watched in school, and I'm not sure we watched them in full. So I would be interested to see some more. I know there are like some interesting films, and we've got The Hollow Crown on DVD.
No, I think of the films of Shakespeare, I've only seen that Tempest that we watched in school and half of King Lear. Because it was National Theatre Live, it was Derek Jacobi, and we went to watch the streaming of it. and then there was a big storm and the antenna blew down. So I think actually it blew down during the storm scene, which was very appropriate, but also quite
Also
sad,
sad, yeah.
because Derek Jacobi was quite a good King Lear up to that point, but so I've seen I've seen the whole of King Lear at other times, but I've also seen Macbeth. I don't know if I said Macbeth.
Can't remember. Yeah.
But I have seen Macbeth.
Yeah. Question 4 is, do you have a favourite edition of the completed works of Shakespeare? I do not own any physical copies of Shakespeare.
We are criminally lacking in Shakespeare.
I think I have a copy that is mine at my parents' house, or that is mine or was my parents' but lived in my bedroom when I was a child. But because I've mostly seen Shakespeare on stage rather than reading it. And because my dad used to work for the RSC and my parents love Shakespeare, so there was always a lot of Shakespeare in my house when I was growing up. The Shakespeare plays I read from my parents' editions, and I never ever owned my own. So I do not have any Shakespeare here.
Yeah, I would quite like to get some, but I don't normally feel the urge to read Shakespeare.
No,
It's been a long time
nice
since I've read a
edition.
Shakespeare, so maybe it would be quite nice to get a completed works, and then we could have a thumb through.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of plays which I've seen that I haven't read that I'd be interested to read.
Yeah, and there's definitely some which I've seen which I know are often cut, where it would be interesting to read and see things that I haven't experienced on stage.
Well, I mean, they almost always got Hamlet,
Yeah.
because it's interminable.
I love Hamlet. I think because I kind of grew up going to see Shakespeare on the stage, I always think of Shakespeare as something to see and never as something to read, and I've only really read Shakespeare when I've been studying Shakespeare at school. So I don't know, it never would occur to me really to read a Shakespeare play in the same way that it would occur to me to read an Oscar Wilde play, because I've just always seen Shakespeare live.
And it's always on, isn't it?
Yeah, especially if you live in London or in a big city in the UK, there's always Shakespeare, just all the time. So question 5 is, what is your favourite comedy?
Well, what counts as a comedy, for instance? Because sometimes
Well,
the Tempest is a comedy
yeah.
sometimes, isn't it? And sometimes it's, what do they call them, the problem plays?
Yeah, so I found a list earlier.
If you can give me a list of comedies, then I can probably...
I can give you a list of comedies. That's what one website says are all the comedies.
So this is Open Source
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare. This is its opinion of what a comedy is. Cool.
What are you deciding between?
Well, it's probably between The Tempest and The Merchant of Venice. I like A Midsummer Night's Dream. A Midsummer Night's Dream is the funniest Shakespeare play that I have seen. Certainly for a modern audience, I think it's the easiest one to make funny. And we saw that great production in Chester.
Yeah. It was outdoor and they had 2 twins playing Puck so that Puck could be everywhere at once. It was very cool.
Yeah, so they have Puck run off on one exit and then immediately run on the next exit. And everyone started flicking through their programmes very confusedly in the interval to work out
what was going on.
But I think in terms of my favourite of the plays that are comedies between The Tempest and The Merchant of Venice, I'm going to go with The Merchant of Venice because I think I've never seen a production of The Tempest other than the one I was in, and the production of The Merchant of Venice. The best production of The Merchant of Venice I've seen, which had Jonathan Pryce as Shylock, was better than that production of The Tempest. So I'm going to say The Merchant of Venice.
So I think my favourite comedy is A Midsummer Night's Dream because I love it so much. I think it's one of the Shakespeare plays I've seen the most, and I think it's also one of the ones I've seen the most done in so many different ways, which is really fun, and it's always hilarious. And I've seen 2 different outdoor productions of A Midsummer Night's Dream, which are both really cool as well. I think it's a really versatile play, and it is incredibly funny, and I really love Puck as a character. However, there are some other comedies that I really love, which I almost sort of think are better, but I don't find as funny. So, like, Measure for Measure, I think is a fantastic play, and it's not, like, it is funny in places, but it's also is very dark too. But I think it's really, really fantastic and probably underrated, but I don't think I love it as much as A Midsummer Night's Dream.
I mean, quite a lot of them are. I mean, obviously, The Tempest, like, it's quite a famous, like, exam question, isn't it? You know, what is it, Miranda's last line or whatever, or what Brave New World that has such people in it, and it's like, actually, most of them are awful. Like, and obviously, like, Caliban is a very interesting figure in The Tempest.
I mean, most of the comedies are not, you know, there's a lot of complicated, messy stuff going on underneath that's not very funny at all.
The Merchant of Venice is actually quite grim.
Yeah, it really is.
And Twelfth Night, like, you know, all the stuff with Malvolio is really...
It's quite bad.
Yeah.
And All's Well That Ends Well is, doesn't really end well, though. And Much Ado About Nothing, and so many others where...
And then The Taming of the Shrew is awful.
Yes, yeah. Telling the truth is pretty awful. So yeah, the comedies are not always that funny. Question 6 is, what is your favourite history play?
What counts as a history play?
Again, we shall consult the list.
Because
apparently Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra don't.
Because I take issue with this.
Yeah.
Because I, to be honest, I don't know. You might know more about this than me, or anyone in the comments can explain to me why Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra, and quite a lot of the other classical plays aren't counted as history plays. Shakespeare did write, I don't know about all the classical plays, but Antony, Cleopatra and Julius Caesar are definitely based on actual histories. You can see bits of Suetonius and stuff that Shakespeare's picked out. So I don't really understand why those aren't histories.
Anyway, what is your favourite history if we're just counting the King plays?
So I've not actually seen many of them. I've seen Richard II and Henry V.
Which one do you like best?
I like both of them, but I think Henry V is probably my preferred play. I like Richard II a lot, I think it's a really good play, but I think Henry V is cracking.
So my favourite history play, if we're not including Julius Caesar in the history plays, is Richard II, which I think is really, really fantastic. I've seen 2 different productions, one with David Tennant as Richard II and one with Eddie Redmayne as Richard II, and both of which were really fantastic. And I think it's a really, really good, interesting play.
I think Richard II and Henry V are both, I find them really interesting because I studied Richard II and Henry V at university, and they're both very interesting kings, and there's a lot of interesting introspection and kind of medieval political theory that goes on, particularly with Richard II, because it's kind of how do you get rid of a tyrannical king?
Especially if you believe that kings are appointed by God.
Yeah.
It's complicated, and that makes it interesting.
And yeah, actually Shakespeare gets that. Richard II is a fascinating individual, as a man who has not necessarily always exercised his power in the right way, but also is very easy to, particularly as the play progresses, to sort of sympathise with. And I think that's the thing, isn't it, that's great about Richard II, is he becomes more deservingly royal the more awful the situation becomes.
Question 7 is, what is your favourite tragedy?
So, if we're including Julius Caesar, it's got to be Julius Caesar, because that's my favourite Shakespeare play. It is the best Shakespeare play, and that is definitive.
Again, for me, I think if we're including Julius Caesar as tragedy, then Julius Caesar is also my favourite tragedy. It is just brilliant.
I think
it's just really good.
I think it's a play that's very relevant to the modern age as well. I think the ideas that Julius Caesar deals with are ones that I think feel very contemporary.
Yeah.
In a way maybe they didn't 10 years ago. It's a fantastic play.
Yeah.
I think I love that period of history, which I'm probably biased in favour of it, but I think it's a fantastic play. I think it's got some brilliant speeches. Mark Antony's address to the crowd at Caesar's funeral is, I think, the best thing Shakespeare ever wrote.
I think you know all of it off by heart.
I do know most of it off by heart.
If we're considering Julius Caesar as a history, then it would be my favourite history. And then my favourite tragedy will probably be Hamlet, which would be my second favourite tragedy, I guess. Which I also think is fantastic and I also love, and definitely used to be my favourite Shakespeare play before I'd seen Julius Caesar. But I just think Julius Caesar is so great. We also saw a really fantastic production of it at the Bridge 2 years ago? I don't really know.
Yeah, the Bridge Theatre in London, which was...
yeah, I don't know when that was. It had...
2 years ago.
It had Ben Whishaw and David Morrissey and other amazing people in it, and it was just absolutely fantastic and very modern and stylistic and really cool.
Well, I think the thing about Julius Caesar is that Acts 1 to 3 are fantastic, and then actually Acts 4 and 5, it's quite easy to lose some of the momentum. And I think because of this one, because they did it as a very sort of, not exactly super modern, but 20th century, so all the war scenes were planes and bombs and things, and also when they killed themselves they used guns rather than swords, which even in a lot of the more modernised Shakespeare, when they do a modern aesthetic, they often use swords, and actually it's quite easy to do killing yourself with a sword a bit sillily.
And it just became in this production really dramatic and kind of stark and awful, but in a fantastic way.
Yeah, and I think they really nailed the last 2 acts, which are quite hard to get right in Julius Caesar. I think if we're excluding Julius Caesar from the tragedies, it'd be King Lear. I think I really like Othello. Othello was my favourite Shakespeare play for a long time. I really. I think Iago is the best character in all of Shakespeare. I really like Iago. I think it's a very rare instance of managing to create a villain who's basically completely evil. Like, he has no redeeming features, but you still kind of root for him.
He's very compelling.
Like, he's a charismatic villain. Like, there's something about Iago that is inherently compelling, even though he's just a terrible, terrible person.
It probably helps that the first Othello production I saw had Ewan McGregor playing Iago, and he was very, very good indeed.
But yeah, I think Othello is brilliant. I think Macbeth is very, very good as well. I like
Macbeth is fantastic.
I saw David Morrissey play Macbeth, and that was very good.
I saw Patrick Stewart playing Macbeth. Yeah, I love Macbeth a lot. I think Macbeth is one of those ones where I think it's probably one of the best Shakespeare plays. I don't think it's one of my favourites necessarily. Like, it doesn't have a stronger hold on my heart, but I do think it's really fantastic.
Yeah, but I think if we're excluding Julius Caesar, the best proper tragedy is King Lear. I think. I can see where you're kind of coming from with Hamlet, but
I just don't love King Lear that much. I've seen it twice, and both times I was like, this was quite good, but it didn't affect me in the way that Shakespeare usually does. And I do think there are things that I find really interesting about it, but I just don't love it as much as some of the other plays. I don't really know why.
I mean, I studied it at school, which I always think.
Yeah.
I think you can actually tell a lot about the plays that people love. Are often the plays they've looked into the most, because actually a lot of Shakespeare's are very rich, and once you start unpacking them, like, it makes you like them more.
It's interesting because actually my favourite Shakespeare plays are not the ones I studied at school.
Is that right?
And the Shakespeare plays. Yeah, I'm sorry. The Shakespeare. Sorry. I think it's because though I don't love studying Shakespeare. I love seeing Shakespeare. And I do find looking into the language and the detail much more fascinating. But actually, like, I grew up going to see Shakespeare in the theatre, and Shakespeare is like something to be seen and to enjoy rather than something to study, in the way that I don't feel with novels or like 20th century plays, which is really weird and I don't really know how to explain it. But I think Shakespeare is all like nostalgic and connected with childhood to me, which may be a bit weird for other people, but that means that actually some of my favourite Shakespeare plays are not the ones I've studied, which became more works of literature than entertainment for me, I suppose.
But then I don't understand why Hamlet's your favourite, because like I've never studied Hamlet, but I can see how once you start digging into Hamlet there's loads of interesting stuff going on in there. But also after like hour 4 you're just like, just get on and die. But I think King Lear is great. It's got so much darkness. I think it's a really compelling, quite a simple story at the beginning, as a setup. And I think there's just so many brilliant bits in it. And it does come from studying it, but like when Edgar's got Gloucester on, he's describing the cliff top. He describes like the Elizabethan hierarchy of being, like in the cliff, like as you can train, like it's brilliant. And I think Edmund is a great character. Stand Up for Bastards is a really, really powerful soliloquy.
Yeah.
I think he's another character. He's not like Iago in that I think he has a lot of redeeming features, but he's He's a villain, but he's very compelling.
Yeah, I do agree on that. In fact, actually, the first production of King Lear I saw, which was with Ian McKellen, and I should remember better than I do. I don't remember that well at all, but I do remember Edmund, and I do remember that speech. And that's the only thing I really remember from that production. Question 8 is, what is your least favourite Shakespeare play?
Taming of the Shrew.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen a shortened adaptation. I haven't seen it in full. I think if I can say it's my least favourite play, but not having seen a full production or read it, I'd say Taming of the Shrew. If I can't say that, I'd say probably Troilus and Cressida. Not because it was awful, but because it's the most disappointed I've ever been in a Shakespeare play.
I think that's because I had seen it when I was really young and remembered it very fondly and told it was great, and then it wasn't so great. Yeah. I don't know if that's just the production wasn't that good or if it's just a bit of a messy play. I think my least favourite is also probably Taming of the Shrew. So I've only seen this on stage once. I went to see it with Jenny from Bookish Shenanigans, and we went to see a version at the Barbican last year, which was gender swapped. There are various different ways that people can do Taming of the Shrew, and I think there is one way which I hear has been done where basically Kate is going along with it, but doesn't agree with it. And I think if I saw a production like that that was done in that particular way, I might enjoy it more. But I haven't seen that in any other production I've ever seen. It's just awful. It's just so horrible that I find it really hard to watch. And it's not of its time in the way that other Shakespeare plays are, in the way they deal with gender. It's something much worse and something much more horrible. And like the production that we saw that was gender swapped, it was interesting that they swapped the genders, but actually it didn't, you know, it's still an incredibly horrible, abusive, sexist society, whether it's men abusing women or women abusing men.
It's at the forefront, isn't it, really? Because there's a lot of gender stuff in all of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
It isn't great, but it's a play about that.
Yeah.
Whereas the other plays, like, you can watch King Lear, and, I mean, there's a lot of, like, Goneril and Regan are... The way they're talked about and the way they're treated is very gendered.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of King Lear is criticising Goneril and Regan for being, I think, basically sort of power hungry.
Yeah.
A bit like Lady Macbeth, and it's wrong because they're female.
Yeah, whereas Cordelia is not power hungry and therefore she's more womanly and appropriate.
Cordelia loves her father more than she wants power, and Goneril and Regan want power more than they love their father. But I think it's only wrong because they are women.
Yeah.
It's the problem.
Yeah, I think that is, at least in part, how it is presented. But it's complicated because, on the other hand, I think there are a lot of fantastic female characters in Shakespeare who are really interesting. But I also think that a lot of the plays that involve women dressing up as men and women passing as men also kind of suggest that women can do most of what men could do. So I think gender is very interesting in Shakespeare and quite complicated. But yes, I don't love the telling of the truth. Question 9 is, what Shakespeare play would you like to direct?
Julius Caesar. I think, yeah, it would have to be Julius Caesar.
You see, I think I'd probably rather direct a comedy because I think I wouldn't know what to do with the tragedy more, whereas I feel like I'd probably could have more fun with the comedy.
Oh, I think the comedies are harder, actually. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, something, what we were talking about before, like the problem plays, like The Tempest or something.
Yeah.
I don't think that, I think a proper comedy like A Midsummer Night's Dream,
Yeah.
I think even A Midsummer Night's Dream, which I think is the one that holds up best in terms of modern audiences' sensibilities, which is why I think it's the one that's put on the most.
Yeah, maybe.
Even that one, it's really hard to do it right.
So what would you do with Julius Caesar if you were directing it?
Oh, well, I think I'd probably, I don't think I'd have any particularly original ideas.
Would you do it Roman or would you do it modern?
I think modern.
Okay.
I really like Shakespeare in Suits. I know that sounds silly, but like
I do too. I agree.
The first adaptation of Julius Caesar I saw, they were all in togas, and it's great. It's really good in togas, but I think as well, because there's such resonance with like modern political issues, I think that period of Roman history in general just feels quite resonant at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think I would do. I don't think I'd do. So the one we saw at the bridge drew a very explicit comparison between Caesar and Trump, which I don't think actually works. I wouldn't do anything as overtly sort of linked to the actual world as that, because I think in general you just tie yourself up in knots there, and it doesn't work. But I do think, I think modern, I think guns. To be honest, maybe I'd just cut everything except Antony giving the speech at Caesar's funeral, and I'd just have people watch that for 3 hours on loop.
Question 10 is, which lesser known play do you think deserves more attention, or which lesser known play are you looking forward to reading or seeing?
I haven't seen enough of the lesser known play. Does Antony and Cleopatra count?
Yeah, but do you think it's that great? Because I'm not that much.
So I would say Antony and Cleopatra deserves more attention.
But not that much more attention.
I think Antony and Cleopatra is not perfect.
It has some brilliant scenes.
I think
in a mess of some less good scenes.
I think Antony and Cleopatra has... You could do a brilliant Antony and Cleopatra, but you'd need to be a great director. Yeah. And you probably need to do a little bit of cutting as well, I think. I think Antony and Cleopatra is dismissed as being a bit of a B-tier play. And in some respects it is, but actually it's so nearly a brilliant follow-up to Julius Caesar. And it's partly because I love Julius Caesar so much, and like we kind of follow through the story in Antony and Cleopatra, and I kind of want it to be a better play than it actually is. But I think the stuff with Octavian and Antony in particular is a really interesting relationship. And some of the scenes are really good. And I think Cleopatra is actually also a really interesting character who you can approach in a really interesting way. I think Antony and Cleopatra it deserves a little bit more love than it gets.
So I think one of my favourite underrated Shakespeare's is Cymbeline, which I think is fantastic. I've seen one production at the RST in Stratford-upon-Avon a couple of years ago, and I just thought it was really, really great. Cymbeline is a tragedy, but it's also got quite a lot of like adventure to it, which I really enjoy, and I think the characterisation in it, especially of Imogen, is really, really good. And I wish it was on more because I think it's a really fantastic play. And then the other one, which I will say, which is underrated, which I quite like, is King John, which I've only seen one production of, and it might have just been that it was a fantastic production because King John is done so rarely that I assume everyone else had decided there's something wrong with it. But it was really good, and it was really great, and it was really fantastic. That was another RST Stratford-upon-Avon production. Maybe they'd just done a brilliant production, but I really enjoyed King John, and I feel like it deserves a little bit more attention than it gets. So there is a bonus question as well, which I'm not going to answer, but you might want to answer, which is, what is your favourite Shakespeare play to act or in or to teach? So I am neither a teacher nor an actor in any way, so I'm not going to answer that. But
well, I'm neither a teacher nor an actor.
No, but you have done amateur dramatics in your past.
I did some amateur dramatics at university back in the day, and I did some sort of speech and drama stuff at school.
Obviously, you've been in The Tempest.
I have been in The Tempest. That is the only full-length Shakespeare I've been in.
Are there any others you'd like to be in?
Yes, Julius Caesar.
Would you like to be Mark Antony?
So I did at school. We had a speech. We had there's a citywide speech and drama competition that we used to enter as in the school. So I did an extract. I did Mark Antony's speech at Caesar's funeral for that once, which I really, really enjoyed. I think there's loads of plays I'd like to act in. I'd like The Merchant of Venice. I think Shylock's a brilliant character. Basically the characters I'd like to play are Mark Antony in Julius Caesar, possibly Julius Caesar in Julius Caesar as well, and possibly Brutus in Julius Caesar, and probably Cassius in Julius Caesar.
One man show.
Not necessarily all in the same production.
Yes,
We did a bit like that Frankenstein they did. I'd do a different one each night. I'd love to play Iago. Just because I think it'd be so much fun to play. I'd like to play Prospero in The Tempest. I think The Tempest is a great play. I only managed Alonso, I think, I think I came on at the end and looked sad, and that was most of my role. Henry V would be a pretty good part as well. Just because the St. Crispin's Day speech is pretty good. But yeah, I think above all Julius Caesar, because it's my favourite play, and I think there's so many brilliant parts in Julius Caesar. Not for women, I'm afraid.
Although the production we saw had Cassius was played by a woman, and that worked very well. So those are all the questions. I'm going to tag a few booktubers, spread the Shakespeare love. So I'm going to tag Tilly from Tilly's Shelf and Roz from Scally Daddling About the Books, Jenny from Bookish Shenanigans and Claudia from the Spinster's Library, Carolyn's Reading Rambles, Brian from Bookish, Claire from Books and Questions, Megan Hammett, Lauren Wade and Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading. Also, if anyone else sees this tag and wants to do it, please do. Like I said, I'll link Libby's original tag video down below. And yeah, that's it for now. Let us know down in the comments if you like Shakespeare and what your favourite Shakespeare plays are. And that's all. And
your least favourite Shakespeare play.
Yes, we'd like to know which Shakespeare play don't you
why
love?
It's the Telling of the Truth.
And that is all for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.